lost my. I believe I just went live. I don't have. One of my screens went a little funny. Okay, so hopefully this is broadcasting. If any of you lovely people, hey, let me say hi to all the lovely people. Hi, lovely people.
Hi there.
Morning.
If any of you who are
Good
watching
morning.
right now,
Good Shabbos.
who are on the Zoom, are able, if you're one of the people who also knows if we're broadcasting live to Facebook or to, this should be broadcasting to Facebook or YouTube. I changed some setting and I no longer have the ability to see that I am. So
Let's see.
it says
Yeah, I don't-
Broadcasting live on YouTube.
I
Yeah.
am broadcasting live. Okay, well, welcome. Thank you. If you are on YouTube or you're on Facebook watching this live, you can put a chat actually in the comments and I'll see that within 12 seconds or so delay. But you're welcome to join. Thank you all of you who are here on Zoom, whose faces we can see. Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Michael and Rose and Kip and Bruce and Rita and Ellis and all those I said good morning to already. And if I didn't say good morning to you by name, I apologize for that.
All right.
We do try, and you can hear people, microphones are on. I do like the idea that people's microphones are live and that you can, let me get rid of that, and that you can hear each other. This is a different kind of religious gathering. So it says right up here, Rabbi Brian's Saturday gathering. I don't think I learned a lot from 12-step programs and seeing that the person at the front of the room, it's not always the person who's presenting who's got the thing that you're going to take with you for the day, that it's often the people who are in the room, people who are in the group who are sharing wisdom, strength, experience, hope. And I like to have people's microphones unmuted. And if you have a question, to please ask. This is live. I taught high school for a lot of years. I taught math to kids who didn't want to learn math. And if I could put up with them, I can put up with you, I guess, but I didn't want to finish that sentence that way. Thank you guys for being here.
You can't.
Let me start us off with, we seem to have been falling into a pattern of starting off with some kind of lifting up of marginalized voices. And last week I brought in this quote that privilege is when you think something is not a problem because it's not a personal problem to you. Let me read it. Privilege is when you think something is not a problem because it's not a problem to you personally. And thinking about privilege. And I wanted to share a link with everyone today. There it is. So if it's going to be in the chat, if you're in the chat, here it comes. And I don't mind the chat. And by that, I mean both ways. I don't mind the chat. I don't mind the chat in that I'm not minding it. I'm not paying attention to it. Joe is moderating the chat. I don't see what's in the chat because I can't do that many things at once. And also, I don't mind the chat in that chat what you want, but it's what it is distracting to some people. And some I found out on some platforms you can't close the chat, and so it gets to be a little bit distracting. I don't think that. Oh my God! I hope I can hold on to this thought while I bring in this thought. Oh, I just lost both of them. Fan-fucking-tastic. That's just great. Anyone, what the hell did I just say?
You were talking about how distracting the chat is. And got distracted.
Yeah.
You don't mind the chat. I mind the chat. You don't mind the chat.
Yeah. No, it was about
all about
anyway,
punctuation.
So let me bring it. Let me
Not just punctuation.
Start that again. In the, if you are live and you see in the chat, I put in a piece that I want us to spend a little bit of time, and we've talked Black Lives Matter at the beginning. We've talked about indigenous land at the beginning, and I think there's this pattern that we're falling into, and I like this pattern of lifting up voices that aren't otherwise heard, bringing some light to what is otherwise things that are not seen and not spoken about. And what I put in the chat is a link to an article about the qualities of white supremacy in culture. And just to if you've never seen that, take a look at what's in the link. Take a look at that, and it's these qualities of white culture that are dominant, and we don't even think about them. So I wanted to lift that up this morning as something for us to think about of that white supremacy isn't just what you see. It's also how people are treated. It's also the ethics, the norms, the mores of how we think the normal way things should be done. And if it's not done that way, there's something wrong with it. And that's a form of white supremacy. Okay, now the second part, I can't remember where I was going. So, oh, I do. I kind of do. Sort of. And if not, you wouldn't know the difference. So I'm going to just go with the transition in front of me, which is this is a community. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about community. And I thank the group who helped me to meet on Wednesdays and the Tuesday group who meet. Is thinking about here's the trade-off. To be a member of a group, you have to give up certain personal freedoms. Right? In order to be a member of a group, you can't. I had a professor who used to say, to be a member of a community means you can't just take a poo-poo anywhere you want. You have to follow some rules, some implicit rules, some explicit rules. In order to be in a group, you give up certain freedoms. Like, y'all can't just talk whenever you want. Of course you can, but then the group falls apart and we can't pay attention to each other if everyone's talking at the same time. That being said, I still want to, but if none of you talk at any time, it's not much of a group then. So we're doing the both at once. I want to pass along. I know Kip and Deep Dive last week, and if you've not been before, after this hour we do a second hour, and in that Deep Dive group they talked a bit about safe spaces and what makes a space a safe space. And Kip, are you ready and willing to take that for us?
Sure.
So we're going to move over to, go ahead, Kip.
Yeah, we had a good discussion last week. I've got some notes I'm going to look off the side. We talked primarily, a safe space is where respect for one another is clearly demonstrated. That seemed to be a fundamental principle, that we had to have respect for one another. A safe space is also created when someone is vulnerable within that space and they're well received. A safe space can be made safer, or a space can be made safer if those in it have an attitude of curiosity about the people that they share that space with. Why do you think that? Help me understand your perspective. Space can be made safer by being vulnerable yourself. If you have the strength to be vulnerable and share more of yourself in a space that's already somewhat safe, it can make it that much safer. And in addition, some of the practical approaches to keeping a safe space include staying on the topic that group is working on at the moment until everyone's had a chance to say their piece, sharing the airtime, sharing the space with one another. And I thought it was interesting to think about, what does it say about how you perceive yourself in a group, your value in that group, if you're not willing to be vulnerable and not willing to take that chance out there? And is that potentially a check-in for me if I'm not feeling like I want to say, hey, I'm not keeping up, can you go over that again? What is that saying about my self-esteem? And maybe I need to use that as a barometer to go, no, I'm worth asking again, or asking that we not trounce over a topic that's important to me. So if anyone's from Deep Dive last week and I missed something, please let me know right now. Let's speak up. And but I think that kind of summarizes what we came up with.
And so I ask everyone to, are there questions on what on the, or to just reflect on, in order for this whole community thing to work, that's one thing, but then also for us to be safe, and for you to I'm looking at your faces, and I'm not seeing a lot of quizzicals, so we're move on a moment.
Sorry, Harold has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Harold or Connie.
Back on your opening remarks of white supremacy, let me make an introductory remark. I grew up in Colorado, and segregation and that kind of stuff was not on anybody's radar. That was the West. And so when I moved to the South, I didn't have this feeling of exactly what white supremacy does. And Isabel Wilkerson wrote a book last year that got quite a bit of publicity called Caste. And if you're not real familiar with the impact of white supremacy, that book is worth a read to show just how much influence white supremacy has had in the United States from the 1600s up till now.
Would you put a link to that book in the chat? And thank you. It is pervasive. It's kind of like, thank you, Harold, for saying that a lot of our culture it's kind of just in the air, and it's like asking a fish, about the water. The fish doesn't even see it. It's just there, and I think it's important on us to thank you. Thank you for the book recommendation and for thinking. I want to go back a second, and I want us to look at last week. Last week, I sent out an email on Saturday, on Monday. If I'd done anything to hurt you, we're going to get to that in a moment. Our topic today is going to be about forgiveness. But before we do so, I want to see if we have any comments or thoughts. Last week, we talked a lot about attachment. And I'm wondering if there's anybody who's got did you have an aha moment over the last week about attachment, of something that you learned that might be something that, Ron, that was a head scratch or a hand up? That was a head scratch.
No, that was a head scratch.
Sorry, folks. That's teacher training for you. Anyone hit some realization about what you're overly attached to, or anyone come up with a great strategy of how not to be so attached? Or go ahead, Jocelyn, and then Alice. Barb, that's a head scratch. Gosh.
So there's several things I have actually accepted about myself, being a brain that is described as ADHD for everyone else and just normal for me. Right. But also the idea that I completely forgot where I was.
It's okay. I did that just moments ago. We were talking about attachment, and whatever you were thinking about, you're not too attached to.
I become obsessed about things.
Yeah.
I do that. I jump from one obsession to the other. And to me, that's the attachment, is that I obsess over something and then I let it go and obsess about something else. And I leave gigantic projects behind because of it. And it's just something I accept about myself. And I have to kind of build rules around myself to prevent myself from over obsessing about something that might be dangerous.
Well, let me ask a group question. Does anyone have any strategy on something of how do you keep yourself, once you find yourself attached to a thing? Anyone have a strategy of what helps to detach?
Give it away.
Experiment letting go.
Give it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
Because it's things and you give it away.
I think also accepting the things you cannot change. And I have a metaphor.
Yeah,
we're in our new apartment today. Yay! And one of the persistent issues of apartments is, loud neighbors. And so this morning, someone was having their Saturday, and I was saying how it's like there's a rattly tree outside of our building, and when the wind comes, we can't control when that branch rattles against the thing or makes that sound. Like, I think somehow having a metaphor of absolute not control. That I absolutely
Yeah.
can't control. If the wind blows and the tree branch rattles, that would be bizarre for me to get hung up on.
Right.
Being
But
able to have it.
if it's a person who's doing it, you get a little more attached to it.
Right, because I think that it's somehow that it's different, that somehow that I can change that, but I don't have the control to change that. And so I think that going back to what you were saying about 12 steps and circling back to bring that in, that just honestly, sometimes the simplest things are so helpful, that accepting the things I cannot change. That I can't change the wind. And I think that just thinking about the metaphor, is this the wind on the tree situation, or is this something I can feel?
Absolutely. I'll tell a very quick story and then we'll get to Al. I remember I'm walking downhill. I'm in college. I'm wearing my propeller beanie hat because that's me. I'm wearing a propeller beanie hat, and I'm walking down the hill right near the I can't remember the name of that building anymore, but right near that building, Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. I'm walking down towards the tennis courts, and somebody comes behind me and pulls my hat off. And I spin around like, what the hell? I got the right to wear a propeller beanie hat. You don't. And there's nobody there, nor is my hat anywhere to be seen. It didn't fly off. It's like not. And I noticed like the wind had brought a tree branch down, and my hat was in the tree, going in the wind.
Damn tree.
But the anger changed completely when I realized it wasn't a person. There was no volition. Nobody was trying to piss me off. Nobody was doing it. It just happened. It's much easier to accept and surrender to nature and the tree and the wind than it is to them. But you make a great point, Jess, and that's for all of us to do, is can we accept them the same way when they do something we don't like? Can we accept it as though it's the tree, the rustling of the leaves, or the tree stealing your propeller beanie hat? Al, what you got, buddy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you were asking about different ways that you can kind of let go and accept. I just find that focusing on my breath is something that I keep coming back to. When I'm really stuck on something, to just be like, okay, it is, and I'm breathing, and really focus on the in and out of my breath. I spend a lot of time on mindfulness. You can Google it. There's like 10,000 resources out there on mindfulness now. And I'm minimizing the number of resources.
You're absolutely right. Is what we wind up doing is we go in a spiral of our own obsessive thoughts, and anything that can stop that, as simple as let me watch my breath. Or one of my favorites is take a pad of paper and a pen and put those in your pocket.
Yeah.
And every time you find yourself getting an obsessive thought or overly attached to something, take out the paper and the pen and make a hatch mark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that simple act of taking the paper and pen out that causes you to not be in that same loop, the same neural loop that you were in before.
Yeah, the other thing I found that's really important is not to do it in a violent way, not to be like, no, stop, Al, don't think that. Instead, to just be like, no, Al, you thought that, it's okay, but come back to your breath. Your breath is a better place to be right now.
And we do all
one way that I do it is I just shake myself. Like I just shake everything on me, and then it sort of.
Okay, I've not ever done this one before.
I do this.
But I'm going to ask us all to do it. Ready? I'm going to put us all on screen so we can all see ourselves do this at the same time. Everyone, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's just see what happens. Shake. Just shake it out. Shake for a moment. That looked good. Let me ask you, do you feel, like off. Show of hands, do you feel a little bit looser right this moment?
Yes.
Maybe. Well, hot diggity, we are done with the service today. That
was short.
That was it. Is it really, wait, folks, question for you. Is it really that easy?
Sometimes.
Oh,
It is sometimes, yeah,
I
sometimes
think
it is.
sometimes. I
maybe.
like the answer. Whoever said sometimes, whoever agreed with sometimes, you get an A in my book because that's all that matters. I think
I want,
sometimes it's easy enough to just shake it off.
yeah.
And Al, what you said about being kind to ourselves while we do it. Afia, who I saw on the line, I don't see her picture right this moment, but who was here a moment ago. Afia overheard me doing my self-talk out loud, and I said aloud to myself, "Damn it, Brian, come on." And Afia said, "Maybe you want to say instead, say, friend." And to just have a kinder inner monologue. And it's a almost impenetrable fortress once you get into that loop.
Yeah.
Well, one of the ways that I've been able to detach, if that's the correct word to use in this particular experience, is separating my mind from wants and needs.
Yeah. That's a great one,
And
Jack.
and wants basically is desires, and desires always get you in trouble.
Well, but they're fun, buddy.
I mean, desires always has always gotten me in trouble in the end of things. But just saying, do I need this?
I love it.
Is the best way to detach.
I'm going to add in a word, and the word I'm going to add in is kind of a yicky word in our culture. And the word that I want to add in the word surrender.
Definitely part of it.
And it's maligned as an idea that it's as though it's giving up, but it's not. It's much more beautiful than that. And to be an adult,
allowing yourself to be,
to surrender to what is, or to surrender who we are, to surrender. Okay, folks, I have a topic today. Yeah, Carol, go ahead.
There's another way of thinking about attachment. You made the distinction between something that happens by chance, like your propeller hat going up, and something that is done by somebody's intention.
Yep.
And there's the story of this man has a beautiful boat, and he takes it out, and another boat hits it. And he's ready to scream. And then he realized there's no one in the other boat. That nobody had any intention, it just happened. And one of the things we have to realize is that most of the people we know are empty boats.
Oh, anyone else get a chill there? And Carol, hold on to that, because the quote we're gonna talk about forgiveness. That's our topic today. And the last quote that I have about forgiveness, it's from Gerald Jampolinsky, and it's awful, and it has to do with empty boats. But I don't want us to get there yet. Let's take a moment. We're going to start about forgiveness. And what we're going to do today is, and you all saw this quote. I put this in the email on that went out. Hold on. It's a Mark Twain quote. And Mark Twain said this about forgiveness. Forgiveness is the fragrance the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Forgiveness is the fragrance of the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. We're going to start with that as a working definition of forgiveness. And I'm going to bring in quote after quote after quote about forgiveness. And they're not necessarily that you agree with all of the quotes. But what I want you to do in us going through different quotes is for you to learn more, and for us to look at the different quotes and say, well, what does this quote teach me about forgiveness? What is this quote? What is this adding to our group knowledge, to our individual knowledge about forgiveness? And here's the first one of that, by Henry Ward Beecher. It says, I can forgive, but I cannot forget is another way of saying I do not forgive. Forgiveness ought be like a canceled note torn in two and burned up, so that neither can ever be shown against one. So it can never be shown against one. I can forgive, but I cannot forget. We've all heard that phrase. I'll forgive you, but I'm not going to forget. I'll forgive, but not forget is another way of saying I will not forgive. Yeah, Bob, what do you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that Jess was okay. I saw that she was having a little bit of a challenge there. I just wanted to make sure that she was okay.
Well, Bob, thank you for checking in. Jess, what do you got to say?
I just was thinking about what you said, the last two quotes, and how one, the violet is destroyed by crushing. It completely loses its form and is no longer existent as a flower.
Yeah.
Two, that the burning of the note sometimes leaves a scar on that some person.
Yes, it does.
One or the other of the parties or any party. And that cannot be as though there was no note. That if there's a scar of that, it's not it can never just disappear. So that's where I was. Thank you for the quotes.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah, Rita, and then Ron.
I have a quote that I always have on the link to this service. It's forgiveness is the ultimate freedom.
And to thank you, Ron, and to remember that we can't. Like these are ideas, and we're not saying that there's anything wrong with you if you can't forgive and forget. Like that, or if you still got a scar and you're still looking at it and still upset. This is. We're talking in the world of ideas here. Yeah, Ron.
I have a little poem. I'm sorry. Forgive and forget. Into the darkness the feelings sway, for they prolonged its stay. As these feelings have gotten deep, it is getting harder to catch my sleep. Love still beats strong, but in chain, for any tear it would be in vain. As I should move on without regret, tried to forgive and forget. What was my plan became my fall, for I did not have the courage to forgive all. As I lacked faith to take the leap, therefore chose to suffer in silence, as if I were asleep. In silence, I wrote.
Thank you, Ron. And for those of you who are aficionados of poetry, thank you, Ron, for that has a lot of ideas in it. We'll have a poetry room coming up, Anne, and then I have another quote that I would like to bring in. Go ahead, Anne.
I cannot remember the name of the author, but he is a surgeon, and he wrote a book titled Forgive and Remember, because as a surgeon, if his patient does not survive,
correct,
he did the best he could, but he has to remember that case, remember what he did or he didn't do in order to learn to be a better surgeon.
I love that.
So there are I love the title, Forgive and Remember.
Right.
So you're always forgiving yourself.
Yes.
Or not doing well, but you remember so you can do better the next time.
So we can learn. I love that idea. Love that idea. Here's another idea by Brian McGill. It said, there is no love without forgiveness, and there is no forgiveness without love. And I'm going to ask, true or false?
I don't know.
There's no love without forgiveness. There's no way I can love Jane without forgiveness being part of that relationship. Or I should say, there's no way that Jane can love me without forgiveness being part of that relationship. And there's no forgiveness without love. Have you ever forgiven someone and there was zero? I don't think there could be zero love in that forgiveness. And you can't love someone without forgiving. Yeah, Charlene? Oh, you're on mute though, hon.
I just jumped when I heard a phone.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm a jumpy person.
Okay. There's no forgiveness without
I reacted.
love. No love without forgiveness. Let me bring in one that I have a hard time unpacking as a quote, and we'll see where we go on this. This is from Gandhi, and there are two ways I can read it, and I'm not sure which way to read it. So here's what it says. It says, the weak can never forgive, Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. And now what I need us to figure out is what form of the word weak is Gandhi talking about? Are we talking about those who are not in power? Or are we talking about people whose moral character is less than? Right, and let's look at both of them. Let's look at both of them.
I think it's mind. I think it's mind and heart. You gotta know where you're coming from.
Let's take a look. The weak, those who are not in power, those who are put down by the system, cannot forgive. Only those who are powerful can forgive. Does that ring true?
No.
No.
Oh no. Okay, go ahead, Meg.
I don't know how to approach it, but a weak person can forgive. I mean, a person who is not in power can forgive someone who is in power. To me, this whole quote is not about that at all, but it's about your personal strengths.
Yeah, right. Your internal fortitude. Hold on one second,
Yeah.
Carol. Yeah. So that if you are a weaker person, you are a person not talking about political power, but we're talking about you don't have a strength of soul, you can't forgive. That the only people who are able to forgive are the people we should be emulating.
Right.
Carol, go ahead. Is that what you nodded?
That's yeah.
Thank you, Meg. Carol?
I'm saying pretty much what Meg is saying. As long as you're afraid, you can't forgive. It's when you're beyond fear that you are able to forgive. And when you're not afraid, then nobody can hurt you.
If you're not
Oh, I love it.
Okay, let's go Steve and then Al, and I saw a different hand. Go ahead, Steve.
Skip had his hand up too.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way.
Go for it.
I think it's a power dynamic. There was an old quote from Leo Roston that said, "Only the strong can be gentle."
Correct.
Because otherwise
so
you're
going
just
on
weak.
the other end of it.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just weak. And
Okay.
in the sense of this, if you are powerless in any way, whatever happens to you, you're really a victim.
Fair enough. Okay.
And victims are in a submissive position, and powerful people have the ability to actually forgive.
Okay.
Rather than to just
it's good.
Take
Victims can forgive.
So I go with the more political dynamic.
Wonderful. Al and then Betsy and let me just remind everyone, we're not trying to be we're in this exercise of learning these quotes. Hold on, let me get past Betsy and then I'm going to tell you.
I mean,
Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, for me, when you said, is it this or is it that? Is it the power or is it the moral weakness? I think it's both. For me, it resonates at both levels.
You like it both ways? Fantastic. You get double serving then.
Yeah, because I get what Steve has said and I get what everybody else has said, that there's an element of this where if you're in a weak position,
if you're one
your forgiveness, how can you possibly forgive if you're really just being hurt?
And that it's moral fortitude. Those are the real forgivers. Go ahead, Betsy.
What?
You're muted, Betsy.
You're muted, Betsy.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right. Yes. When you're in the mind frame of the victim,
correct.
You are not ready to forgive, but it's a matter of calling forth the strength within you, and it's not necessarily that you are a strong person. It's that you have that strength within you can bring forth. Rub your lamp, and the genie will appear.
And I'm gonna pause this for a moment, and then bring in the next quote. The pause for a moment is to tell you a story that I make fun of Unitarians for, and it's an old joke about Unitarians, and if you're familiar with Unitarians, you'll know why. And the joke goes like this: that a Unitarian comes to a sign and it says "This way to heaven." And it comes to another sign that says, "This way to a discussion about heaven." We are talking and we're having a discussion about forgiveness. That is this one. I want us also, though, to know that this is not just a heady exercise. Unless it I would hope that we are also all moved to think about forgiveness in our own life, who we need to forgive, how we're going to do it, and to bring it into the personal. So yes, this is a discussion about heaven, but I want us to also be eyes on the prize. Here's the next quote. This one, oh, come on. Hold on. There it is. It is very easy to forgive others their mistakes. It takes more grit and gumption to forgive them for having witnessed your own. How is it not, I'll put it that way, is it not difficult to forgive people from seeing when you made a mistake? Wouldn't it be awesome if we could forgive people for them seeing our weaknesses? Because I try not to show anyone my weaknesses very much, really. And
Say that
wouldn't it free
again. Say that
things
again.
up?
What you just said before. Like,
Go ahead, Joe.
say it again slower. About what did you say? You
That
don't.
We can.
It's hard. It's hard to be weak in front of other people.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's embarrassing for me. It's one thing for me to make a mistake, and that's why, hey, if I make a mistake, easiest thing for me to do when I make a mistake is I'm going to just ghost. I'm out of here. I'm not here anymore. I don't want to be seen having had made a mistake. I want out. Peace out, Rabbi Brian. It is easier for me to forgive you for the mistake you make than for me to forgive you for having seen me make a mistake.
Rubbing it in is a tough way.
Not that you're even rubbing it in my face. I'm just aware that you saw me fuck up. I'm aware that you saw me in my moment of weakness. You saw me yell at my kids. I'm not going to forgive you that. You saw me do something dumb.
I'm struggling with that one.
Go ahead.
I'm really bad at mistakes. I don't handle them well. I panic. It's awful. And but I'm having a hard time understanding what you mean by forgiving someone else for seeing that.
It's one thing for you to make a, thank you, Robin, for asking. It's one thing for you to make a mistake, but isn't it worse when that mistake is witnessed?
Well, I mean, it adds that level of embarrassment.
Right.
But I'm certainly not upset with the other person for seeing me.
I am.
Oh.
I'm upset that because if they didn't see, it's one thing if I it's one thing if I miss the toilet when I pee. It's another thing if anybody finds out.
Why they have toilet paper.
I'm embarrassed for having made a mistake, but I'm worse embarrassed, and I'm embarrassed because you saw my mistake. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let's do a quick Bob and Ron, who have already spoken, and then take Afia, who hasn't said anything yet. Go, Bob.
Yeah, I think that in my life, I've given a lot of thought to this concept of forgiveness, and that the conclusion that I've come to is that forgiveness is something that's all internal, and that what I might want to do is, if I make a mistake, that I made a mistake. I could be upset about it. I could say other people saw me about that, but they may or may not have paid any attention to it.
You're
but
absolutely
that within
right.
me,
It's an inside job.
Right. Within me, it's all about my forgiving
yourself,
other people who have offended me.
Yeah.
And or of myself for doing something. And
brilliant,
that
Bob.
I think that it's an internal thing that that I need to work with.
Thank you. Ron, and then Afia.
Another poem. I'm embarrassed that all my poems are about how I struggle over you, over the past, over you. How dare you?
Nice. That's the end of that one. Thank you, Ron. Afia.
Yeah, I think the thing you just said about like when someone witnesses you making a mistake, like it kind of flips which side of the road you're on the forgiveness. Is what I was thinking about before you brought that up was I wonder how much our view of forgiveness has to do with our ability to give it. So for example, if someone sees me make a mistake and I suddenly feel like, oh wow, I can never forgive them for seeing that. Is that more of a reflection of my ability or struggle to forgive myself or other
Wait,
people?
hold on
Does
one
that make
second,
sense?
Afia. Hold on one second. We're gonna get that other microphone. Go back 2 sentences or so. Is it more in me or is it in you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if like there's something about being able to gauge. I'm trying to apply what you said to myself. So like if I'm in that situation where somebody sees me do something and I'm like, oh snap, now they know this about me. Are they ever going to be able to forgive me and see me in good light again? Does that tell me about my own ability to forgive? That like I know how hard it is for me to forgive somebody. So if they see me screw up, then I'm in trouble because I don't
Because
give it
they're
out
not
very
gonna
easily.
let it go.
Right.
I
And
hear
so then like what can I learn about my capacity for shame when I feel like I need forgiveness myself?
Yeah. Good. Ellis, this is great. This is also lovely.
Well, I've been listening to everybody and all the different explanations and ideas and thoughts. And isn't it still all about our internal perspective of our own beliefs and thoughts? Has almost zero to do with anybody else. It's everything to do with the way we are interpreting our own crap sometimes.
And this is going to bring us into the quote that's going to tie us all the way back to where Carol was. And you're not going to like this quote, many of you. Just deal with it. I don't mean to say it in an obnoxious way, but just if this pisses you off too much, just take a time out. You don't have to be in on this quote. Forgiveness does not mean assuming a position of superiority and putting up with or tolerating behavior in another person that we do not like. I'm going to say that part again because the second part's going to twist it. Forgiveness doesn't mean assuming a position of superiority, putting up with or tolerating behavior in another person we do not like. Forgiveness means correcting our misperception that the other person harmed us. Ouch.
Yes.
And Jess, I apologize because I know with the scars, with the pain, and you're like, fuck no, they did harm me. This is a thought experiment, this quote. I'm not saying it's true. It's just for us to think about.
If I may, I think that what we've been talking about in the chat.
How are you?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. There was somebody's mic.
This is what I was talking about, is that if I forgive myself for my misperception of that person, that is the forgiveness.
I'm fine. How are
From me, it starts with me forgiving myself for the misperception, and then it unties my attachment to them.
Yes.
So the forgiveness to them
How long
happened.
did it take you to get there yesterday?
I didn't have to forgive them to make it happen. I had to forgive myself, and the attachment to them, the forgiveness went to them. If that makes sense.
Forgiveness, and that's where the word misperception is. Forgiveness means correcting our misperception that the other person harmed us. Yeah, Robin.
Yeah, so
it's a hard quote.
It's been hinted at a few times in conversation here that some pretty horrific things happened to me when I was little, and we can all agree that the kinds of things that happened are horrific. But when I think about that quote, what comes to my mind is I'm still me,
Right.
I'm still a child of God. I'm still pure and whole in my heart.
Amen.
Even though I have a lot of big, ugly scars, they weren't able to harm me,
Amen.
my true self. And then I can forgive from there.
I love that.
And I can be fine with the quote, but it's
I thank you. I thank.
but
I
you
thank
do still have to acknowledge that pieces are broken
appreciate
anyway.
your honesty
So
and letting us and owning it, making it, bringing it back to the personal. I want to do something we've not done before. Ellis, I apologize timing wise, but I want to give us a good.
Arranges everything.
I'm going to give us a few
Okay,
minutes. I'm going to do something that we've not done before, and I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And in a moment, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to ask us to sit in silence until the spirit or your spirit or however it is feels like you want to share something. And this is going to be a safe the rules to this is nobody's allowed to respond to what it is that you say. We're just going to share out. If you even ask a question and you say, and I'm not sure how this works, the next person is not allowed to directly respond. I want you, and especially people who haven't spoken already, to have a space to be able to say, when I think about forgiveness, it reminds, and just to see what you have to say. No crosstalk allowed at this point, and we're just going to allow a little bit of space between people. I'm going to put a 5-minute timer up, and when the 5 minutes is over, and if we just sit in silence for 5 minutes thinking about forgiveness, that's cool too. So we're going to do 5 minutes just on forgiveness.
Forgiveness is my access to freedom.
When I think of forgiveness, I think of severe emotional pain.
I am who I am because of all my past history.
When I think of forgiveness, I think of forgiving myself for the past that have led me into harmful things.
I hate it when people demand that I forgive.
forgiveness is a practice. I forgive and then I have to forgive again.
I think forgiveness is starting with just oneself and leading from there.
Right now, my desire for vengeance is stronger than my desire for forgiveness.
I think forgiveness is a two-way street.
Forgiveness for me was a way of realizing that I was worthy, that I didn't have to hurt myself and others couldn't hurt me. And it was liberating to accept my own worthiness.
Forgiveness
Forgiveness is a different thing for each person.
Forgiveness is the ultimate freedom.
Forgiveness is a choice.
To be forgiven is humbling.
I love myself. All is forgiven.
Forgiveness is a challenging process.
I have to forgive myself before I can forgive anybody else.
I don't like forgiving people. Because you know what? I really much rather be pissed off and angry, and it's so much like, fuck, I hate it. I hate forgiving people. It's like, I know it's good for me, but I also know flossing is good for me and stretching is good for me, and I don't really like doing those. And I would rather hold on to my goddamn resentments, and I'd rather be pissed off sometimes. It gives me something to do.
I'm really impressed. Everyone knows how Jesus forgave the people who didn't know what they were doing, but he's the Son of God, so that's not so impressive. I'm more impressed that Socrates, on the way to drinking the hemlock, was able to forgive those who did it to him and say, no harm can happen to a good person. So if you really know who you are and you know your worth, no one can hurt you.
Well, not to do crosstalk, but we couldn't end on better words than that. Can we get an amen?
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for participating and doing that. Joe, you have a few prayers that you have to read for us?
I do. This week's prayers include April, Michelle W., Alex W., Rita S., Susan and Ed G., Carla, Nancy T., Nancy K., the James Smith Cree Nation, Abbas, Arletta, Vashti, Sandra, Mitch, Greta V., Amy G., Marilyn G., Alex and Scott, Linda, Phil, David, Lincoln, Addie, Lauren, Brian, Lauren B., Hugh, Ray, Patty, Christina P., JJ and Kristen, Julian Bill, Lynn, Cheryl, Jess and family.
And let's take a minute of silence starting here at 50 seconds. Thank you all. Folks, I was just looking at the group of people and just seeing that we all did 5 minutes of sharing. And by the way, I made a slight bet with Ron about the 5-minute sharing and how well that would go, just having open mics. And I'm not going to say who won, but Ron owes me a candy bar now. But looking at everyone and just seeing what's happening, folks, look at the screen of all the people. I'm going to put all the people on the screen for a moment. I want you to all look at each other. This is a group of random ass adults who are alive at the same time that you're alive. It could be anyone in this room. And the same way that I know that you have in your heart love for the people on the screen. And yeah, sometimes they might annoy you and sometimes they might have their microphone on when it shouldn't be. But the way that you're able to all be together loving towards each other, which includes being in a community, which means not saying what you wanted to say and forgiving people because they're not perfect either. The way that you all are able to do that with each other here, take it out there. And I know you do. And while I'm saying this, I'm also going to say, invite your friends to become part of this. This is an open source religion outside the box gathering. Please invite other people to join in if you find this to be valuable. I have a few announcements to make because That's what time it is. The announcements go like this. Should you find yourself to be depressed right now? Yeah, that shit happens. It is okay to not be okay. You're having a hard time. Yes, you are. Don't deny it. It's true. If you're having a hard time, you're having a hard time. And sometimes just acknowledging it helps. We're going to have at mn.rotb.org. If you haven't been to the clubhouse for a while, please go to the clubhouse. We've just spotlit our friend Bruce. Bruce is, if you want to see a beautiful picture of Bruce holding a head of cabbage and learn more about Bruce, please go into the clubhouse and see that. We have spotlights coming up on Alice and Christine. Those are coming up. They're scheduled already. And the Spotlight Committee, who I would like to thank, would like to invite Eileen and Jack Burke to please go to mn.rotb.org because we'd like to spotlight you too. And you're welcome to ask for your own spotlight if you aren't. Hey, you know what? Just send an email. Go into the clubhouse, send me a note, and we'd love to spotlight you too. Anyone who wants to nominate themselves. On the... Oh, I didn't do that. Dang it. Come back next week. There's a whole thing I didn't do that I want to do. Come back next week. You'll find out. You. I have it right there. Eventually coming up, we are going to be having ROTB Live, less than an hour virtual gala showcase fundraising event. Yes, it's a very long title, but I kind of enjoyed it. Stay tuned. There's lots that's got to be figured out about that. If that piques your interest, please let me know. On the 30th of this month, as many of you already know, there's a Religion Outside the Box High Holiday service. Let me find, here it is, a little promo video to show you. Come on, Brian, get the right screen. Here it is.
Make sure you forgive yourself for forgetting that.
I'm all right. I'm Rabbi Brian. There it is. I'm going to be running high holiday service. Special high holiday announcement. Look at that. Presto changeo. Did you see that magic?
Wow. Bam.
Wait, look at that. Ready? I'm going to show it again. Took a long while. So Friday the 30th here in Portland, Oregon, or you could go to lu.ma/HHD High Holidays 2022. I hope to be able to see you there. Let me get back to my regular screen. And that will do it. Other announcements. Stick around for the other rooms. And we have a 12-step meeting. 12-step meeting you can find. Hey, you know what? We have a lot of groups going on. All of them can be accessed here. If you want to talk more about God, there's a Shekinah group. If you want to join the Religion Outside the Box 12-step meeting, all of it. Oh, I'm pointing to the page that you can't see. That's a brilliant idea. I'm Rabbi Brian. I'm going to be running services. That's not working. That's that camera.
Yeah, change clothes right in the
Go here. Go here. Go to the Shekinah group. You can find out more about that. If you want to join the Hebrew-ish, Jewish-ish group, that's here too. That we're going to have that room open in a moment. And one last announcement. don't. All I got to say last is I thank you. I thank you, Lee, for doing the tech. I thank you, Joe, for doing the prayers and for doing the chat. I thank all of you who are co-hosted, who are making this happen, and to Al and to Ron and to Kip and to Joe and Maria, who's not here today, who helped to run the after service programs, and Jess, who's involved in the Hebrewish, Jewishish one, and Anne, who's not on screen today, who helps with, like, so many of you help to make this thing what it is. But let me just end with those words. I thank you. I thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording in a moment. Oh, and also thank you to Patricia, who's on the web, and to Shirley, who was on the web, who made comments, and I saw your comments. I thank you for doing that. Everyone wave to each other, say goodbye, as I'm going to stop the recording at this point. And Lee, that's going to put you in charge. Lee?
What?